everyone. It's so nice to see your smiling faces. Thank you for joining us today. To get us started, those of you that did participate in the Inheritance Project with us know what we're going to do to get started. But for the sake of those who didn't get to participate and for the recording and folks who are watching this, we are going to get started with a really brief breathing exercise just to help us all sort of connect in the space, get grounded in what we're going to do today. So we're going to do a box breathing exercise that's 4 breaths in, hold for 4, 4 out, hold for 4, and we'll repeat. So I'll count us through. Go ahead and settle in. You feel your feet on the floor and take a deep breath in. 2, 3, 4, hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3. When you're ready, go ahead and release that practice. Feel free to open your eyes and come back to us here. Hello. Hi. One other thing I'd like to do and share among many things that we'll be sharing today that we learned from the Inheritance Project to help us feel like we're all here together today. And I'll ask those of you that did attend to help, be my demonstrating folks here, my guinea pigs. But we'll go over some body language that we can use today that helps us sort of interact with each other and get out of our space here in our box and into the room. So a few that we learned. If you hear something today that resonates with you, or that you agree with, or that you're just struck by, we do the I feel you, and that's really just 2 hands over your chest here to send out I hear you, I feel that. Okay, so that's one. The second that we have is me too. So if there's something you hear where you're like, yes, I agree with that, or I've been through that too, we do sort of the hang 10 and we go from our chest outwards. So me too. And then the third that we like to do is just celebration. So if you hear something really, you're like, yes, right? So we can snap, we can jazz hands, we can clap. Okay, so I feel you, me too, and some celebration. And that's one of the many skills that we learned from our interaction with the Inheritance Project. But it's a way that I found I really enjoy when we're in our little squares, like the Brady Bunch in our Zoom meetings, to sort of come out of that and be able to engage with each other. So thank you all for joining us today. We're going to do a debrief of some of the takeaways from our experience with the Inheritance Project. I think so many faces here that I'm familiar with seeing from the work that we did, and some folks who were a part of making this possible. So we'll go through some of these pieces, and then there's a few next steps and some pieces I'd love to share with you and get your feedback on. So just by way of placing some context here and reminding you sort of where we started. This really started about around this time last year, over last summer, when we received some funding from the York County Community Foundation to do a pilot program. Hey, there you go, Kate, of the using the Intercultural Development Inventory, or the IDI. And the IDI is an assessment that is used to measure one's intercultural competence. Intercultural competence basically being the way one reacts or handles situations in which they are working with someone who is from a different culture or background than they are. And we wanted to do this IDI for several purposes. The first was really to help us establish a quantifiable baseline of where York County nonprofit leaders were in terms of their intercultural competence. And then we were using this IDI assessment as a way to receive some guidance for some DEIB inclusion programming that we could be doing moving forward. So that was really the purpose of utilizing this tool. Last summer, we had 36 York Federal Fellows alumni take the IDI. And since then, we've actually used the IDI for all of our incoming board members. All of the White Rose Leadership Institute staff has taken it at this point. And then also the new class of York Federal Fellows, the class of 2023, has also taken the IDI at this point and is going through the process. So this is a tool that we've found to be very helpful, and we're going to be including it in all of our efforts and programming moving forward. So just as a reminder, the results of our IDI pilot program for York County nonprofit leaders was to show that we were in the orientation, the developmental orientation that the IDI calls minimization. Most people who take the IDI in general across the world are in minimization. And you can see it's right there in the middle. It's the largest category. And folks who are in minimization tend to try to seek out commonalities and similarities as a starting from, as opposed to focusing on differences. And what we learned from the IDI is that likely you find success in interacting with people from diverse cultures and backgrounds when you can draw on those commonalities. And I just realized I'm not in slideshow mode, so let's make that bigger there. And then what we learned from the IDI that was our developmental opportunity, or their sort of prescription for us, was to develop a deeper understanding of our own culture. So really, in order to work better with others, we had to start from within and learn more about ourselves, and also to learn more about culture in general and what it means. So we took that directive from the IDI and engaged a group called the Inheritance Project that works out of New York State. The Inheritance Project had done some work here locally with the Braided River Collective and also with York College, and we had heard some really great feedback. And so we started engaging with that group really last spring and summer to find out what it might look like to work with them. And what we ended up coming up with was a plan here that was essentially an 8-week immersive program. We opened this up to all of the participants who took part of the IDI in the fall. So we ended up having 24 leaders go through the Inheritance Project programming. That was York Federal Fellows, alumni, White Rose Leadership Institute staff, and board members. So we started in January with a 4-hour in-person workshop. And then we had 3 2-hour virtual workshops, followed by 2 integration sessions. And we really just finished this up at the end of last month. So we had about 8 weeks really working together as a cohort. And this journey started with that 1-day workshop where we really started to introduce the conversation, understand some of the shared language and vocabulary, started touching on some of these tools, and really started building our connections as a group. And then the virtual workshops were really focused more on conflict, our nervous system, and where those breathing exercises can come in, helping us understand how to navigate some difficult conversations or conflicts that we may come into in our professional lives, but also our daily lives, and learn some skills for how to navigate those relationships. And then also, throughout all of this, the process has been very reflective and having us look within at our own coming up with our own leadership manifesto, coming up with our own situations where we can see these aspects at play in our lives. So that first day workshop back in January, the main objective there was really to help us understand the difference between inheritance and identity, to learn about what identity is. And the key piece was really starting to share a brave space as a group. And furthering our connections. And I'll share anecdotally, that I think we were able to open up very quickly and start sharing some pretty deep stuff pretty early on. And that is one of the underlying goals of everything we do within the York Federal Fellows Program is really about deepening those relationships and furthering the trust that we have among the fellows so that we know that we can be those sort of trusted advisors and confidants that we can go to for collaboration and as issues arise. So that's always something we're trying to do with the work we're doing here. So some of the key takeaways from that all-day workshop, we're again learning about the difference between inheritance and identity. And one of the ways that really resonated with me that Katya, one of our facilitators, shared is that if you think of your inheritance as sort of the clay that you're handed, it's some of those fixed assets that you really can't do anything about. So maybe that is your skin color or your country of origin. The clay, the inheritance is what you are given, what you are handed, and then your identity is how you shape that clay, how you shape that inheritance to fully express yourself and represent who you are. And we learned deeper about identity and the 5 C's of identity. So these 5 areas that go into making ultimately what you make out of your clay. And those 5 C's include your creed, your country, your class, your culture, which I know we struggled a bit with because we're talking about culture in general. So the way that Inheritance Project defines culture is really sort of the particular social groups that you find yourself a part of. So we all have lots of different cultures and lots of different groups that we're a part of. That could be the LGBTQ plus community or gender. We talked about politics. Can fall into your culture as well. And then the 5th C is color, the color of your skin and its impact on your life experiences. So we started diving into the 5 C's during that workshop. And then we got our first taste of some of these inclusive leadership tools. We did some of them today already. Body language, so that idea of speaking it into the room and putting it out there, right? So, and finding ways to encourage each other to open up. The first tool, agreements, we see this happening with a lot of meetings that we're a part of, especially as we moved into the virtual space. But coming up with shared agreements in your group, things that are going to be non-negotiables or ways that will help you communicate better to reach your goals in those meetings and interactions. The third, defining terms. We talk a lot about not making assumptions and really being clear with our communication. So if there are specific terms or specific area we're talking about, even if we think everybody knows, to really just put them out there and have a shared definition so everybody's working from the same page. Those 5 C's of identity. Stream of conscious writing. We did a lot of writing in this program, and stream of conscious we learned is a good way if you are trying to gather some feedback or really get some deep reflection or answers from your group, to give them some time to really digest and work through what it is they're thinking before you put them on the spot. So that stream of consciousness writing, and then timed shares, which were particularly helpful in the virtual space. But laying it out beforehand, this is what we're going to do. One person's going to have some time to share without being interrupted. The next person will share without being interrupted, and then having some time for feedback and discussion at the end. So that's an overview. of those leadership tools that we learned in that first workshop. And then after every interaction that we have with the Inheritance Project, they share with us this really comprehensive and very interesting inclusion and data report. So this is the report that they shared with us after that first interaction, after that first workshop. And much of this information is taken from participant feedback. So we were really pleased to see from the participant feedback that 94% of participants that day said they would recommend it participating in that program to others. 88% of the participants said they left that day feeling more connected to the fellows community, really feeling like they gained some actionable tools and things that they would be able to apply to their lives and their work, and that they understood the 5 C's of identity. 81% of participants also said that they left that day with a better understanding of how to be an inclusive leader. And we heard, some great feedback in this, but also anecdotally, since we've had that day together in January. And we did learn one thing that could have improved the workshop was more comfortable seats in the Appel Center studio. So we'll pass that feedback along for sure. The Inheritance Project then also outlined some opportunity areas for us based on the feedback that we received that day. And we'll touch on that here as we get in here a little bit deeper. So the first piece of feedback was to develop a culture that embraces constructive conflict. So 21.8% of the responses had said that there was a time that they felt disempowered or marginalized in our community in York because they were dismissed or they weren't valued. And you can see here in some of those feedback questions that we answered, there was a range to 10. So, overall, 7, we're at a 7 here with people feeling comfortable bringing up tough issues to other fellows or feeling equipped to navigate conflict constructively. You'll see a bit of a difference here in age, and I'll touch on that in another slide. But overall, a 7 out of 10 feeling comfortable bringing up tough issues with other fellows. But things that we'd like to change are, making these ideological differences less toxic, knowing how to navigate some of these conflicts, and this idea of it to still be okay to disagree and still get along and be able to work together. The second development opportunity that we have, according to the Inheritance Project, is trying to find inclusive practices, adopting these inclusive practices to invite all voices. And 1 in 3 of our respondents, cited DEI as the top improvement that they'd like to see in the York community. And DEI, in this sense, broken down into these various categories, as you can see. So our respondents said that there were some concerns around age and seniority. So someone responded as saying, that they might be seen in the community as being too young to get it, or that they don't have wisdom. Race, would like to see the York community to embrace and support and advocate for and value persons of color in our community. And then also concerns when it comes to gender. Gendered sort of responses or gendered valued assumptions when it comes to our industry of nonprofits. And you can see someone here saying that they felt less valued because they were a woman. This key area here to point out that I said I'd hop into is this age seniority piece. This is a little bit more of a deep dive. And one of the things that came out of this feedback was that younger, non-white, female identifying fellows rated their inclusion index indicator significantly lower than older white and male identifying fellows, particularly when it came to being comfortable being their authentic selves. So that is an area that's really important for us to see on paper and to see out here in these numbers. So it's something that we can be mindful of and be aware of moving forward. And then the third development inventory was this idea of building on and enhancing our culture of celebration. And this was something that was also really cool to see, is that 21% of the respondents said that they felt really empowered and valued when they were selected to become a fellow. So that's a good reminder that the York Federal Fellows Program is ultimately meant to be a celebration of each other, and I think a way for us to really lean into that. And it's an area that we could certainly build on and enhance. People saying that they felt part of something, and especially a part of the supportive and accepting group. 26% also said that they felt empowered when they received recognition and rewards and promotions. So these are some pieces that we'll get back to, but just something to keep in mind as being called out specifically after that first session together. So just to remind you then where we are in the journey, we just finished the Unpack Your Inheritance workshop there in January, and now we're going to hop into debriefing those 3 virtual sessions, the inclusive leadership immersion. One of the ways that we would start our sessions in the virtual format was to take a look at this emotion wheel and to come up with 3 that identified how we were feeling in that moment. This was a tool that became really helpful for us to be able to gauge sort of where each other were in the space, but also to allow us to understand if there was other sort of stuff that we were bringing into this meeting that maybe, wasn't applicable to this meeting. So I'll ask you all here, while we have the emotion wheel up, to go ahead into the meeting chat, and let's say at least one feeling, but if you can give 3 feelings that you're feeling right now, we'll just give it a shot. Curious, anxious, ready? Interested, overwhelmed, thankful, hopeful, inspired, intrigued, hopeful, busy. Seconds in there and you can put them in. Rush, curious, creative. Thank you. So this is just a good way, a tool that we learned to check in and to, let people be able to reflect on really how they're feeling. Sometimes it's hard. We've learned to be able to actually put words to how we're feeling, but also just to allow us to sort of name what's in the space and put it out there. So this is our emotion wheel, one of our key takeaways from our inclusive leadership immersion. And then we spent most of the time looking at various aspects of these 7 skills. So these are the 7 skills for inclusive leadership that we took away from our experience with the Inheritance Project. We learned that these can happen really in any order, except for number 1, pause and breathe should always be first. We learned a lot about the nervous system and our response system, and how it's always helpful and powerful just to pause and breathe. And so that's why we started our session that way today. But that is something that we always learned can be our go-to when we're starting to feel conflict arise or we're starting to feel our response system kick in, is to pause and breathe. The second skill is to notice assumptions and stories. And this is really realizing that everything that we see or think we see, we are seeing from behind our own lens of our own inheritance and identity. So we went through a really powerful exercise where we looked at some images and had to really just be able to state facts without adding our own stories or assumptions to it. And it was a big light bulb moment for me to really see that in play, how we can add our own nuance and take to things and start assuming things that are not true at all. So this idea of being aware when we're making up stories and trying to step back and just notice the facts and observe what we can actually see in front of us. Leading with curiosity is the third. So really asking questions and making sure that we fully understand where the person is coming from. Again, not assuming, and asking questions and asking for clarification. I know this was an area that a lot of us struggled with, or that it maybe felt unnatural at first. I'll say I went through the process with my son, who's 9, and he was like, "Why are you talking to me like this?" So it's a little awkward at first, but ultimately it does lead to more clarification, and it is a really helpful tool. The fourth is receiving and acknowledging the other person's share. So we learned that a lot of times people just want to be heard, and being there to listen, and then to acknowledge and sort of repeat back what you heard from them, so that they have the opportunity to say, yes, that's it, or no, you're not getting it, and continuing to go back and clarify. So that receiving and acknowledging the other's share is really important. Fifth, naming what's in the space. You can do that by asking how people are feeling right now. It's also a sense of, if you're in a meeting and you feel tension starting to rise, to name that and put that out there and say, it seems like we might be getting a little frustrated here. So why don't we pause and breathe, and then, start getting into leading with curiosity and asking what might be contributing to the feeling that's in the room. So that's naming what's in the space. 6, communicating your needs and requests is also an area that we realize we all tend to have a lot of trouble with. So being able to identify what it is you need to get from this interaction and to get from this moment, being able to communicate that back. And then leading into the 7th, finding common ground. So what will it take for you to be satisfied with this interaction? What would it take for the other person that you're interacting with to be satisfied with this interaction? So finding common ground. So those are the 7 skills. We spent a lot of time in each one. And again, they can go in any order. They seem simple, but they're not something that we naturally do all the time, or I will say it's not something I naturally do all the time. So it's helpful to have it as a reminder, and to know that there is a way to sort of break things down into steps and work through some of those sticky situations we find ourselves in. We also talked about the inclusion dial. And this is a really cool tool for organizations and businesses or groups to use to be able to get feedback on whether this group is seen as a safe space, as an inclusive space, or as a place where people are celebrated. And it's really just a way to get feedback. So we did do this poll. We did an experiment in the last session to see where we place White Rose Leadership Institute on the inclusion dial. And we did, I'll share, and I have witnesses in the room. The one that says unsafe, that was actually a mistake, and the person shared that they did not mean to click that, because I will say my heart dropped into my stomach when we saw that. But it was really just, where would you place them on the inclusion dial, and to see where you're checking in. So again, the inclusion dial starts at safe, and that's sort of the very basic, right? Like we hope people feel safe, physically and emotionally safe, to be in this space with us. The next is that they feel welcome, regardless of who they are, and hopeful that they can bring their whole selves to the group. Celebrated is a group where people actually feel celebrated because of who they are, and that they're rewarded for contributing their unique ideas and perspectives. And then cherished is, the gold standard, or the aspirational, and that's where this inclusion permeates the entire organization. Differences are embraced and really feel cherished because of who they are as part of this. So you can see here that White Rose Leadership Institute is seen as a welcome space on the inclusion dial. So that was very cool to see, and we're making our way towards cherished. We did have some saying celebrated. So again, the debrief and the report that shared with us from the Inheritance Project following the ILI, following those 3 virtual sessions. We have some program impact by the number. So 100% of the participants said that they gained new leadership skills. That's huge. That's what you want to see. And 100% of participants also said that they used body language at least once in the past month. So I'll celebrate that. That's great to see. 92% of participants gain tools that will help them resolve conflict constructively. And 92% also use those 7 skills and stream of consciousness writing at least once in the past month. So awesome stuff there. 83% of participants said they felt more capable having difficult conversations at work, and felt like they gained some tools to help them lead more effective meetings. And I think we can all celebrate more effective meetings. So that's awesome. And then, also here, couldn't see because my window was covered. 100% in the self-awareness category here are more aware of how inherited beliefs and behaviors can impact their ability to lead. 92% have a better understanding of how their nervous system impacts their leadership. And this is huge. 83% feel greater empathy towards others, yes, and feel more connected to their York Federal Fellows community. So overall, we were really thrilled to see these numbers, and felt really encouraged that we had such great feedback to participating in this program. And I know that I felt the same way. In their own words, we'll just call out a few here that people have started using these tools already with their staff and their board. It's making them feel like a more cohesive unit. People are saving themselves aggravation, which is great. We have more people who are listening to understand and then responding. So these are all really, really positive outcomes from the work that we did together. The greatest impact was providing those actionable skills and tools. And the respondents said in sort of, top 3 tools that they learned, that number 1, pause and breathe. And yes, that's something that we can do anywhere with anyone, really subtly too. So someone doesn't have to know that you're having to breathe in that moment. The second skill was leading with curiosity. So asking questions to get to true clarity, and really being clear with each other. And then the third was that skill of noticing assumptions and stories, and realizing when we're bringing our own assumptions to a situation and not just observing the facts. So that's huge. Continuing with those, people were sharing that they're feeling more calm and positive in their work life. They're able to explore other people's perspectives. They're making space for others. We're improving communications. It's easier to get to solutions. So, again, all very positive impact coming from the Inheritance Project work here. And then some areas that fellows shared that they wanted some ongoing support was in the area of having more experience and practice, to have some accountability to each other, and to be able to keep the momentum going. And I'll touch on that in a sec here. To have some feedback and coaching, to be able to, really workshop some real life scenarios. And then some help with, again, understanding and communicating our own needs, which is an area that a lot of us learned that we struggled with, and especially those of us that work in the nonprofit sector. So those are some areas that we have an eye on now, that we know that people are looking for support with. So the Inheritance Project did come to us with some recommendations on how we can work towards some of these goals. So continuing to support the fellows on this journey. So defining perhaps a coaching structure, accountability structure. I'll touch on that in a minute. Consider opening this up to the broader fellows community, or the broader fellow community, and then potentially even beyond the fellows to the nonprofit community at large. to adopt inclusive practices to invite all voices to be able to contribute. One of the suggestions that the Inheritance Project had made was to create affinity groups within the fellowship program. So that would be ways for us to continue to connect in ways that don't just have to do with our work life, right? So maybe folks who are parents, are people who are new to the York community, folks who are close to retirement. Throughout this process, we worked together in triad groups, and those were groups of 3, smaller groups of us, where we were able to talk a little bit more deeply about some of these topics. And I think that folks shared with us that they really liked having that ability to share a little deeper. So this affinity group is something that we could potentially look into. And then to create intentional writing structures so that we could be able to make sure that we're including and hearing all voices. So utilizing the stream of consciousness writing and the timeshares that we talked about. Another way that they said that we could build on and enhance our culture of celebration, recognition, and mutual support would be to add a give and get session to the end of our gatherings. So a give and get session is when one person says, I have this that I can offer. So for example, I am willing to help folks learn how to enhance their social media presence for their organization. And then you ask for one thing that you're looking to receive help with. And then I am looking for some help around governance and making sure that we're, meeting all the best practices for an organization. So adding those opportunities to give and get to our interactions. These are some of the quick wins, sort of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, recommendations from the Inheritance Project. And then they also shared with us some deeper strategic plays, or some things that will take a little bit more work for us to put into place, but are worth us exploring. So bringing this leadership training to the community, hosting community dialogue around these tools, around these 5 C's, hosting events for fellows to be able to continue to exchange and get to know each other. I'll touch on something that we're doing to that end in a moment. And then in this final piece, something really to chew on here, to really enhance our culture of celebration. They had recommended, putting together possibly an annual retreat or a conference, or maybe even our own awards ceremony to recognize each other every year. So we're going to be asking for your feedback on some of these pieces, and where you would like for us to go, or some areas you are interested in seeing us go. And I'll put a link in the chat to a survey here at the end that we would love for you to fill out. But just to touch on a few of these things that we are putting into place now, we are going to host an inheritance potluck in June at Dream Rights. So the idea behind this is that so far we've extended the invitation to everyone who participated in the IDP, so the Intercultural Development Plan, and the Inheritance Project itself, and we'll begin to open it up to others who want to attend within the fellows group and our supporters to attend this inheritance potluck, where essentially you bring a dish that is meaningful to you in whatever way. And then we're going to share why it's meaningful to us with each other. And then we have the idea to also then collect the recipes for those dishes and put together our own little cookbook, our York Federal Fellows Inheritance Cookbook. So this is one of the pieces of feedback and direction that the Inheritance Project gifted to us that we are going to put into place right away. So if you've received that invitation, if you haven't RSVP'd yet, keep an eye out, and then I'll be sending some reminders to make sure you can sign up to join us for that. The other piece that we're looking into in the near future is really to be able to continue to engage the Inheritance Project. This is one way that they have put forward so far that they do have a coaching package that would allow us to continue our group. These would be monthly group sessions where we really can workshop some some relevant conflicts or situations that we're facing and continue to workshop them together as a group. I don't have a slide on this, but another area that the Inheritance Project is looking into opening up, another opportunity, is a subscription model essentially to their web portal that would include some of these monthly check-in sessions, kind of like a book club, resource readings, recommendations, those sort of pieces. So as more details come to light on that, that might be something that we're exploring. And then another opportunity that we're looking into with the Inheritance Project is they're putting together essentially now a train the trainers program or a program whereby individuals can be trained in the Inheritance Project's facilitation process, so that, for example, if I would go through this facilitation training, that I would be able to offer the Inheritance Project programming through White Rose Leadership Institute, for example, to the next class of incoming fellows, to a larger group of fellows at large who haven't participated yet. But it essentially allows us to sort of license the Inheritance Project programming and start to utilize it ourselves. So we are looking into several options to be able to keep the momentum going, to be able to continue working with the Inheritance Project. I should mention, I neglected to mention that our work with the Inheritance Project to date was supported by Powder Mill Foundation. And we're super grateful for that. So we will be, once we get more details on what it would look like to continue working with the Inheritance Project moving forward, we will be seeking out additional support from our funders who, understand the importance of DEI in our community and, who can see hopefully this great impact that we've seen from this first round and are interested in seeing this work continue. So stay tuned for that. And then here I mentioned that we have this survey that we're going to send out to you. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to put the link for this survey in the chat so that either now or if you want to click on it and get it up there so that you can help us out here just with some help continue to guide with us as we figure out how we can keep this work going so we don't lose the amazing momentum that we have to date. But I did want to open up, leave some time here at the end for any questions for anyone who went through the program with us. If you'd like to share some of your feedback or some of the impact that the program has had on you, I'd love to sort of just hear it here in this space. So everyone is muted, but if you want to go ahead and unmute and hop in, we'll feel it out like we did with our silent counting and then see who wants to hop in. Or I'll just call you out. Thanks,
Megan,
Kelly.
I can jump in and just maybe open up things to get started. I really enjoyed and appreciated a lot of the tools that the Inheritance Project team brought to the table. There were some unique kind of twists on things that I hadn't experienced before. And that's always great. I thought the opportunity to come together as a group, while a majority of our time together was virtual, I think it made it work for everybody. I will just say a bit of feedback that for maybe us to consider going forward as you're doing this planning, and I can include it in my survey as well. But the Inheritance Project is pretty firmly rooted in the experience of an immigrant population and folks that have had that as part of their inheritance and framework. And I think there could be some enhancements to their work in particularly having the experience of Black Americans be more centered in their work, as well as others. So that was, for me personally, that felt like maybe a missing piece in the work to date that's so important for our work in York. But overall, I learned a lot. I enjoyed the time with others, and would love to see us continue to extend in a variety of ways. I thought their suggestions were good ones. I was seeing those today for the first time and thought there were some great pearls there.
Awesome. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for sharing that. Kelly, I saw you on mute before.
Yeah, I loved going through this, not only to try to, connect to my own 5Cs, because I feel like I don't have much of a identity. It's a long story, but it was really good to kind of really take a deep dive into that, and also to really just gain the skill of to take a moment of breaking away from the stories that we tell ourselves as we're preparing for an interaction. And I've been able to use that even with my kids, especially my 15-year-old, who makes those fast assumptions about what a situation is looking like. And we talk a lot about, well, wait, let's say what's your story you're telling yourself versus what is actually happening, has been really, really helpful.
Thank you.
Megan, let me, how do I say it? Well, I'll just say it. One of the things that I found was the tools I thought were excellent. I've seen them in different other types of training and things like that. My only concern about the Inheritance Project was I found it a little discombobulated, is the word I keep bringing to myself. I didn't feel as if it was very organized at times. And when they got us together, yes, she had it all planned out, but the different emails and things were confusing to me. And using their portal, I felt it to be very challenging, to say the least. Now, I'll go with the ages and say it's because I'm old and not used to doing a whole lot of that stuff. But, I struggled to think, did I do the right stuff? Did I do the right amount of it? And then next thing I know, I get the thing saying, "Oh, you passed everything and you're certified." And I thought, "Oh, well, that's great to know." But I didn't feel that way, as I went through it. I just kept thinking, what am I missing? And that's why I was afraid to miss a session, because I just felt that if you weren't there to try and catch up. So I went back and reviewed some of these sessions, and I thought, "Ooh, did I really do the right things for this?" So that was just my only concern.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Michael. And definitely, we did give them feedback throughout on the portal and some of the things that we were hearing. So I think hopefully that is something they're working on, but we'll definitely share that on the...
Hi, this is Deb. I definitely agree with Michael about it's it's a very ambitious program. So it's complicated. And because I know everyone, in fact, when we do the wheel of emotions, people are so busy that it was hard. And I'm retired. And so like Michael, I really was at times thinking, am I on the right place? In fact, I had to call you, Megan, and had a good conversation. But putting that aside, it's a wonderful program. And I really think, as others have said, it has a lot of depth to it. And as a retiree, I've used it in my volunteer roles. I mean, it's really just, it's so human. I mean, it really gets back to physiology and emotions. And I thought it was excellent. And I wish it could be streamlined in a way so it's not so complicated. And I also just want to say that the triad, I loved my triad, Kelly and Anika. We got to only spend a little bit of time together, but really opened up quickly. The format, we really did some great sharing. So I know it's hard to orchestrate that at a community level, but I think that there's a lot of potential there.
Did anyone else want to share or have any questions?
I just wanted to note that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I just want to say quickly that my triad, thanks to Tammy, has already gotten together for lunch. So it was a great extension of just kind of catching up and talking about what, you know, was going on in our work lives and our personal lives as well.
I'm echoing a little bit of what Jenny shared, and I'll be completely transparent as, going through this process as a Black woman. Um, I don't know that it was especially unique, but I did feel that less attention paid to race and ethnicity, which I know is a challenge for us in the York community. And even sitting in the sessions, seeing who's in the room and who's participating, I think to spread the impact of this and how this might help us all continue to grow is to diversify the racial and ethnic makeup of those participating. Because, Deb mentioned our triad, and I shared a good bit with my triad about walking through my journey as a Black woman that I think sometimes um, it seemed as though some of the things I was sharing were kind of like, oh, I never thought about that as someone who's not Black. And I just wonder how much richer this could be made if we were intentional about having more racial and ethnic diversity in those larger group conversations, but even in the triads where it might be more comfortable for people to share.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anika. Yes, and of course, this, part of the reason we are taking on, we took on the IDI and this project is because of White Rose Leadership's commitment to growing our diversity among our own leadership and staff, but also among the fellows community. So it's definitely something that we are that we're prioritizing. And I think as we move into being able to offer this, if we look to offer this outside of the fellows group, right, then we have a larger community we can reach. But that always ends up being the sort of catch-22 when we look at our when we look at our participation as fellows, right? And so that's something that we're very mindful about growing and changing in the future. Thank you. Anything else for the good of the group while we're here? So I will, I'm going to post this recording afterwards. And then also on our site, I'll post the access to these slides so that you can, see some of those numbers and that info if you want to, take a second look or a deeper dive. And I'll share that out with all of you afterwards. So I guess at this point, I'll just say stay tuned. And please fill out that form so we can get some feedback. We really do want to be intentional with the programming that we bring in. So we're really looking for, feedback and guidance to make sure that we're choosing the right programs and things that will truly be impactful. So stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for your reminder invite to the Inheritance Potluck. Kate, what am I missing? Anything big happening coming up? No.
Don't forget, Give Local York.
Give Local, of course. I will say also we're getting a do-over on our guest bartending because we got rained out this past Saturday. So this Saturday we'll actually be at Gift Horse again. This time in the evening, we're piggybacking on Penmar Irish Festival's event that they're having there. So we'll be there from 5 to 7. Supporting White Rose Leadership Institute.
With 100% less thunderstorm.
100% less thunderstorms, yes.
We almost washed away. It was entertaining.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thanks for your interest and participation throughout, and we'll be in touch. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day. Yeah.